Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you will enjoy this as much as we do. I think at times, because I've gotten to know all four of these gentlemen who are sitting here, which is Marc Molinaro, the County Executive of Dutchess County, Mike Hein, the County Executive of Ulster County, Steve Neuhaus, the County Executive of Orange County, and the same one who can't find his razor like me, Scott Samuelson, who is the chairman of the board of Sullivan County. And a special shout out to all the people that came from Sullivan County this morning. I get paid to do this, so I'm very impressed, and this is great that you guys made the trip. As you know, it's about 4.5 hours from Sullivan here. And so I greatly appreciate all of you for getting up early this morning and coming and joining us. All right. Let's just get this one over with. And let me explain the format that we use here in case this is your first time. So I will pose a question to the first couple of rounds to all four of them. It's impossible to sort of get them to sort of say, no, I don't want to talk about that, but we try. And then what we do is we engage the audience immediately, and we'll ask for a follow-up question on that topic. So no speeches. If you have a follow-up question on the topic, then I will recognize you to come join us. After that, we switch over to what I refer to as the lightning round, where I'll do my best to direct a topic. And this is how we try to get as many topics in for you to listen to get some sense of where the thinking is among the leadership in the Valley here. So I will try to direct it to one of them, and we'll see if I can actually have any control over my three more associates there, but we'll see what happens. So let's just get this first question out of the way, and we're going right to Scott. Scott,
what could this be about?
Shock of all shocks, it finally happened. I only was involved 20 years. There are people who were involved 50 years. What does the casino mean for Sullivan County, and congratulations on being selected?
First of all, thank you. What does it mean for Sullivan County? It means a lot for Sullivan County, but I also think it really means a lot for the region. We have already started some conversations on how we will make this extraordinary project a win-win for not only the region, but also the state. We've had a meeting with Steve on the construction side of it, with the developers, and how we engage Orange County, and I know that we've spoken to Mike, and I'm sure that Marc will be involved as well. I plan to have a tourism summit or a roundtable on how we can all work together to make this destination resort a destination resort for all of us. So it's an extraordinary opportunity. We worked incredibly hard, and I thank our incredible partners in Sullivan County, the partnership Marc Baez, the Visitors Association Roberta Lockwood, the Chamber of Commerce, Kathy Patty, and of course the incredible IDA, that without them I don't know that we would have been as successful. We knew we had the best developer, we knew we had the best project, we knew we waited the longest, we were confident, and we are thrilled.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to move on to Steve on the same topic, but Steve, I do have to say that probably the classiest post-casino award statement, something like this, where it was, look, we've been at this for a year, but Sullivan County has been at it for 50. And was he disappointed? Yes. Did they have lots of applications? Yes. But it was probably one of the classiest remarks I've ever heard in losing a competition. But there's still opportunity, and how do you feel?
Absolutely. If you go around the room, first of all, I got a prop up here, so I got to get this up, I think. First of all, Marc's got a growing IBM. Mike was highlighted in Governor's Magazine, Governing Magazine, as one of the top 10 leaders. Scott got a casino, but I got highlighted as Hudson Valley Super Dad. It's not fair. His mom wrote the article. Absolutely, because now every time there's a chore to be done in the house, because my wife is not in the picture, she says, go ahead.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
So look, we all worked hard, and my partner in economic development, Maureen Hallahan, over the outside of the room. We did what we did for Orange County, just like Michael did for Ulster County. But as soon as the dust settled, the decision was made. I called Scott up that day and congratulated him, and I think it's going to have a huge regional impact in a positive direction. Like he said, we are all meeting and talking, communicating, and I think there's 2,000, 2,500, whatever the jobs they need at the end of the day. It's going to help the entire region. I have residents in Orange County that need the jobs. We have a very diverse workforce, and this project, I think, requires 30% minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. Orange County is home to 23,000 veterans. I had 130 men and women come back from Afghanistan yesterday in a private reception at Stewart Airport. No press, nobody else from the military. So we have a huge need for that section of the community to work, and I think it's going to be exciting. So, and let me tell you, these guys could have been like, you guys were, put some fly in our ointment. They've been nothing but respectful to Orange County. Really, Scott has been the best, and so is Charlie, who's really the guy, the spokesman for Montreal, in our opinion. You couldn't ask for a better group of people, and that's why I really believe it's going to be a successful impact for the region.
Thank you. Mike, obviously, the Nevele was in the competition, but typical of you, you didn't sit back and say, okay, we lost, let's find something else. You even still want to figure out that, and you have a title for it and called the Ellenville Million. I just get confused with the Buffalo.
I do enjoy looking at you and thinking to myself, is there no chance you could have shaved her today? Nothing. It was that hard? Within the Hudson Valley and all the jobs that means, both short-term from a construction perspective and long-term, is good. We can narrow it down to that and say Sullivan County, I thought their proposal was incredibly strong. I really did. I thought the effort was made. I thought the proposal was strong. I think it's great for the entire region. It will be great for Orange, Ulster, Dutchess, and obviously Sullivan County. We're extremely excited about what that means. I would say a win in one particular portion of the Hudson Valley is not a loss for the other parts of the Hudson Valley. Now, as a leader in Ulster County, one of the things I immediately did was, and I don't know how many know or don't know this, but as a neighboring county, a certain number of dollars comes to you to be able to address the impacts that having a casino in a neighboring county may have. We immediately dedicated $1 million to Ellenville to help spur economic development in the Ellenville area within Ulster County. We thought it was important that we set a very clear tone, and it's been very successful. The community is engaged in determining where those dollars go. But again, a win for one is not a loss for the other, just the opposite. It's supposed to be, this is right up Pattern's alley. It's about a community coming together, regionally acting, and making a difference. So we couldn't be more excited. Again, the leadership in Sullivan's been fantastic. Scott was wonderful. Everybody has really been engaged in this process. So it really is a win. But I can't believe you're spending this much time on something. The answer was, it's really good.
Well, okay, and so the only other thing I want to do is ask Marc is, why did you decide or to not sort of push it and to help, because you actually offered letters of recommendation to the other people and were actually quite regional about it, but why did you decide not to pursue it?
Well, let's be clear. First, I don't know that it was our decision alone. I mean, quite frankly, Dutchess County was not competitive for a casino placement. And I served in the state legislature when we started voting on the casino constitutional amendment. And frankly, had Sullivan not been awarded a casino, the constitutional amendment would have been a fraud. I mean, quite frankly. Sullivan was not only the poster child, but most importantly, I think the impetus behind the constitutional amendment coming forward. As far as Dutchess was concerned, and this is what, as Mike said, and what Pattern celebrates, it's also what we believe, there are very few people outside of elected officials who care about municipal boundaries. So the benefit of a casino and a destination in Sullivan County to Sullivan is great. But that will have a ripple effect on the rest of the region. Not only the indirect revenue, or I should say direct revenue that we'll receive as a community, but Dutchess has a very robust, very strong tourism brand, if you will. We also have about the largest and fastest growing rail line in the world, the Metro North line from from Grand Central to Poughkeepsie. We are going to see new tourists, new visitors, and we're going to see individuals travel within the region. So now our goal, I think, as a region is to all capitalize on the benefit. As Steve mentioned, I'm hopeful that those jobs that will be needed to build stay local. I see a number of our trades here. I hope that a lot of our local construction workers get to work. I'm hopeful that we're going to share in these in the tourism effort. As folks come to the casino, they're going to be looking for other things to do, and we've got great opportunities in our counties, and we're going to work together really to capitalize and maximize the benefit as a region. And that's what it ought to be about. In order to grow the economy, we can't be parochial. We've got to look beyond municipal boundaries and cooperate.
All right, thank you. And that's a good segue, because I want to broaden the discussion out of economic development. And Steve, so let's start with you then.
Dad.
All right, so no casino, but very interesting, like per capita, the current form of grants for economic development, the CFA process that the governor created, Orange County basically does incredibly well. It outperforms Westchester per capita. And what's next? Where do you want to go? And what other areas of economic development do you want to pursue?
I think we have a really bulletproof team in economic development. Bob Armistead couldn't be here, our IDA chairman. He's down in Florida. But again, I mentioned Maureen, myself. The three of us are the people you meet at the door when a new company comes here. So a year ago, when Amy's Kitchen and their CEO came to meet with us, it's one-stop shopping with us. And I believe that the success that you're getting through the CFA process is that we have proven that we can get speed to market. And I know we're trying to stop talking about casinos, but if there's one thing the casino process did for Orange County, is the 6 proposals Orange County could show that despite New York's record of 3 to 5 years to get a project approved, if you really want something and you're really motivated, you can get it done a lot quicker. So we're using that banner, that example of last year working as quick as possible through the planning process to now start developing and identifying new parcels of land to develop, because that's the big key we have to have. When a developer comes here, a company wants to come here, we need to have shovel-ready sites. So that's why we adopted a shovel-ready program last year. It was a collaborative effort. But that's really going to be the next big thing for us, because we have a lot of projects in the pipeline. I got my State of the County on Wednesday. I'm going to announce a bunch of them. Healthcare is completely changing in my county. I think it's going to affect Michael as well, with the changing big hospitals that are coming into Orange County. If you don't know about it, it's probably the worst kept secret in the Hudson Valley. 2 of our big hospitals will be changing this year. So that's exciting stuff. We have a lot of growth in the healthcare industry. We're going to have at least 500 new jobs in one section alone, 100 of them MDs. This is, and I'm under promising, because I think it's at least $700-800, just 700 to 800 new positions in the next 12 to 18 months. But these are about 400 LPNs, RNs, and about 100 MDs. These are jobs we want our kids to have. Good paying jobs. So I'm excited about it. We have stuff across the county that is really developing. I can rattle them all off, but I'm excited what we have under construction as soon as the snow melts this year, as well as stuff that's going to be continuing coming through our pipeline. So the big thing that we need to do in Orange County is to continue that, identifying sites that are developable, and as well as infrastructure to support that: sewer, water, roads, bridges, and we'll talk about that later on. But this is we're building more stuff in Orange County this year than in 10 years combined. More bridges, more roads. Literally, we have a focus on infrastructure that we haven't had at all. And now we're really, what I'm doing is playing catch up as well as preparing for the future.
And by the way, that's the answer to Mike's question. When the snow melts in my house in Sullivan County, that's when I'll shave.
So you're not shaving till July?
Mike, recently the Poughkeepsie Journal pointed out that they did this analysis going back to 2003 to 2013 for job loss. And it showed that Ulster County had the largest job loss in that period of time. However, since I know that I track this very closely through the regional council, the last couple of years, Ulster County has been performing phenomenally well in terms of job creation. What's different? Where are the goals? Where are you heading?
Well, again, I think Steve touched on a whole host of serious things, which is everybody collaborating and working together. It's a critical part of it, whether it's IDAs, whether it's be shovel-ready funds, whether it's be legislators, county executives, but it's absolutely driven by a business community that's embracing this. We understand who we are. Again, the tourism industry within our community is a strong component. Agriculture, again, we were talking about precision manufacturing. Ulster County is doing some of the most exciting things when it comes to precision manufacturing. We're manufacturing things, and we're an exporter to Asia. And there are very few places that export to Asia. Ulster County clearly is one of them. We were number 2 in the state in new job creation over the course of the last 2 years. That's an exciting thing to be coming from a county that is relatively small. Number 1 was New York City. So that really speaks volumes about how this is working. Understanding, though, that there's also new projects on the way right here. I mean, I don't know if many people in this room realize this, but there's a new project happening in New Paltz called the Wildberry Resort. It's exciting. The reason it's exciting is it's being done by the people that run the Rocking Horse Ranch. And again, if you don't know about that place, you should, and I'll tell you why. It's the number 3 family resort on planet Earth. On planet Earth, okay? That's a reality. We have places like Mohonk. We have a whole host of things all across the Hudson Valley, and I always say that when people visit our communities, they're not asking whether it's Ulster County, Dutchess County, Orange County, or Sullivan County. They're looking for a particular experience. And so making sure that those kinds of situations are, again, we are border-free when it comes to this from our visitors. Critically important that we embrace, again, our friends in labor who've done an extraordinary job with this casino project, but also with our infrastructure. We have blurred the lines between what economic development is and understanding that infrastructure plays such a critical role in that. Again, everybody here understands that if our infrastructure isn't booming, if we're not making sure that we're doing the catch-up from years and years and years of neglect, that our community is going to suffer. For those of you who do know, then this is very real to you. Anybody who's driven down the road and hit 900 potholes or been inconvenienced by a bridge that was closed for far too long. There's a reality here. Most of the bridges that were designed in our community were designed in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was extraordinary work that was done, but the upkeep wasn't there. And because of that, we're not just having to replace them, because it's not about just repaving a road or replacing a bridge. It's making them so they're ready to go for the next 40 or 50 years, acceptable to pedestrians, and we really embrace that process, that we really make sure that it's in line for our businesses, and rethinking how we do it. Again, you've seen bridges get shut down, and it inconveniences an entire business community, and in many ways negatively impacts the finance on the bottom line. Well, in New Paltz, what we're doing, we're closing down a bridge in New Paltz because we have to replace it. But instead of just doing that, there's a tandem bridge right next to it before one bolt is removed so that it doesn't negatively impact the business community. And again, we understand the importance of economic development, infrastructure, and how all those things are tied together.
Thanks, Mike. Marcus, you and I had a chance to talk about this. A better article about Dutchess County could not have been printed 2 weeks ago in the New York Times describing a housing project from the point of view of marketing it and saying this is where we want to attract people. And you previously just mentioned that tourism is among the things that are in your wheelhouse. Are there specific projects, are there things that we should be looking at within Dutchess County that are going to add to the, your economy and to the region's economy?
Well, I can't say that it's the best housing development in the world, but But Silo Ridge, this is a $500 million investment in Eastern Dutchess to really bring about a modern, fully, in essence, sustainable residential development. But let me back up to that to say that there is little question that Dutchess was really among the last into the Great Recession, and I say quite candidly, we are among the last out of the Great Recession, somewhat insulated by a large private sector employer, our largest, IBM, and at the same time, the rebound somewhat insulated because of a large single private sector employer, IBM. So we have, over the course of the last 3 years, really been restructuring economic development. There were 13 separate agencies in Dutchess County dedicated to economic development. We've been consolidating them, at the same time creating a much more aggressive economic development strategy. As part of that strategy, not only identifying vacant commercial and industrial space that can be refitted and repurposed, if you will, for economic development, but also branding the county. Tourism, we often talk about tourism as sort of this nifty little business segment off to the side where we attract folks to visit. But the truth is, tourism is as much about branding a community for visitors as it is branding a community for employers. And what we are now in the midst of is this is our third year of a national and international marketing campaign to really brand Dutchess County as a place to live, work, and play. And we have seen the growth. Tourism represents about $500 million worth of visitor spending in the county. It's nearly 10,000 separate individual jobs in Dutchess County. And at the same time, it provides, I think, the base, the quality of life that employers are looking for. So when IBM Poughkeepsie announces that Dutchess County is the center of the universe when it comes, not my words, by the way, theirs, the center of the universe when it comes to the development of the Z13 mobile mainframe, that we are their worldwide distribution center, Poughkeepsie. It speaks volumes when Gap decides to invest $96 million and create 1,200 new jobs in Fishkill. It speaks volumes about, even in the midst of a very difficult economic condition, in a state that is by far among the least friendly when it comes to business development, we are starting to see the rebound, the comeback, if you will. So by using tourism and the investment that we've made, I know that Mary Kay Verba and Dutchess Tourism is represented here today. We've been going worldwide, trying to attract not only visitors but employers. And let me offer that that our economic development strategy has had to evolve. We are a fairly developed community as it is. Certainly Eastern Dutchess and Northern Dutchess, we celebrate our agricultural industry. It's much more rural. But we're a fairly developed community. And by the way, most of our commercial space developed in and around IBM. So when we talk about 2.5 million square feet of vacant commercial space, the bulk of that is former IBM facilities or associated IBM facilities. So we've been trying to repurpose those sites. We've certainly been working to bring infrastructure to them so that when we can attract business to those facilities, we will. But at the same time, we've been looking inward at the development that keeps young professionals and young people in the community. We are the home to among the finest learning institutions in the state of New York, and certainly the most in the region, capitalizing on Marist, Bard, CIA, Dutchess Community College, and Vassar. We have thousands of young people who come here to study. They come here to learn, and we have to capture their hearts and their minds now. How do you do that? Invest in your city and village centers. So we have an exciting effort with the city of Poughkeepsie to transform the riverfront, a world-class riverfront. In fact, I often say it's not the city of Poughkeepsie's waterfront. It is Dutchess County's riverfront, and as a riverfront, it needs to be world-class. Why? If we can bring young professionals to housing opportunities, commercial opportunities in and around a train station, we can keep them here. You know, the millennials don't want to live in a 2,500 square foot home with 2 acres of land and have to pay skyrocketing property taxes. They'd like to live in a condominium next to a train station. They get to New York City and then fly to another capital in the world. So our goal is to take that infrastructure that exists, the young people who are already here, and really attract them and keep them in our city and village centers. So when the New York Times writes about Silo Ridge, it's a great story. We love it. But they're also writing about Beacon, or I guess as they like to refer to New Brooklyn. I mean, the truth of the matter is we are starting to see the revitalization of these village and city hamlets, and with that will come the new businesses in the future years. And with that, Dutchess County will continue to grow.
I might add that about 2 years ago, Patton wrote a paper where we looked at the entire region and we said that why doesn't Poughkeepsie embrace the fact that it really is truly has the potential to be a college town? It's surrounded by 5 colleges, and the president of New Paltz is here, which is only 18 miles away. And that could be one vision, not the only vision, but one vision for how to revitalize the city of Poughkeepsie.
Leadership.
You care to expand?
No, it's leadership. I'm sorry. It's not a criticism of anyone. It's leadership. You have to break down barriers. I've spent nearly 20 years in elected office, and I can tell you the one thing that keeps us from doing anything is fear, parochialism, selfishness, self-centeredness, the concept that it's my title, my success, or it's no one's. That's what holds communities back. When I look at the city of Poughkeepsie and the potential that exists there, it can once again be a world-class city. It can be a world-class riverfront. It can affect the entirety of the Hudson Valley region. And when I look at communities that are embracing change, you've got to go back to your roots. So as elected officials, our job is not only to incentivize that kind of revitalization, but darn it, we have to really pressure it. We've got to hold folks accountable. And I would say to the room here, that's your job as much as it is ours. We have community leaders that need to understand that they have a resource that they are allowing to decay. And unless you invest, unless you commit, unless you pressure us to make those bigger and bolder decisions, we're going to remain stagnant. I would say that the governor's proposal to compete for revitalization money, upstate revitalization money, why shouldn't that be a Hudson River City revitalization? You've got Kingston, you've got Newburgh, you've got Beacon. Certainly we can stretch way out into Sullivan County as well. There is little question that the new growth, especially if you want to hold on to the innovation and creativity that young professionals bring, the new growth has to be in and around transit-oriented development, beer and wine-oriented development, city and village centers. And if Poughkeepsie or Newburgh or Beacon or Kingston can't embrace that, and I believe many of them are, if they can't embrace it, we've got to push them there, because that will be the future of the Hudson Valley.
Let's stay right there. Let's just stay right there. We've got, Pattern has 2 premier issues for its 50th anniversary. One is called an Urban Action Agenda. We couldn't agree with you more. Each of you, Mike, Ellenville, Kingston, Steve, Newburgh, Scott, Liberty, Monticello.
John, I think it's important to understand that there's a reality. We're seeing the waterfront in Kingston booming. We're seeing the embracing of places like a college town, like New Paltz, become an enormous economic engine. You can't find an open storefront in New Paltz. It doesn't exist. The cumulative impact of having a SUNY school and embracing it as a college town has been overwhelmingly successful. The economic impact, again, we can't say thank you enough, because every single year, good economy, bad economy, having a college in your community can have a positive economic impact. But I also think that we as elected officials have an obligation to do something different. We have to put aside all the partisanship and really just step forward and say, are we being impactful? Are the actions that we're taking making a difference in our community? Are we doing the basics? Are we creating a climate where business can succeed? Are we lowering taxes? People can always talk about why it's difficult, how it's hard, how innovating and reforming and changing and all those things are challenging. All that's true. But at the end of the day, and having done this for an extended period of time, I'm much more concerned with end results. I'm glad to be able to say in Ulster County, and it's one of the reasons that we have been successful in new job creation, is because taxes went down at the county level 2 years ago, last year, 3 years ago, and with the big announcement, I'll lower taxes again next year too. Because there is a reality here. You have to create a climate where that can be successful. I believe that too many communities are lost when it comes to understanding that we all collectively have to work together. I know my colleagues, both on my right and on my left, get this. They bust their tail each and every day. But it really is about creating a climate where business can succeed. If you do it, it's remarkable what happens. If you don't do it, the consequences are devastating.
Steve, you have 3 cities in Orange County. I just came from Buffalo, where the state thinks it's important to travel to Buffalo in February. That's where I get to go. The rest of you that go south, have a good time. One of the interesting comments made by the Erie County executive was that the day of trying to look at the city of Buffalo as something else and not having anything to do with the county are over. That if Buffalo can possibly come back, and there are some signs of that, then the question is, do you also look at the cities of Orange County and say, how do we integrate them into the revival of the county?
I definitely do. I can't comment on Erie because of the industries up there are completely different. But if you look at my 3 cities in Orange County, they're all very different. Port Jervis is on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They have a very tough time competing because of the tax difference right over the border. There's one gas station in Port Jervis, and I think only his parents go to them because so you go right over the border. It's 50 cents cheaper in New Jersey. But we are working with that mayor very aggressively. I got the Middletown mayor and city council president here. They're doing a great job changing Middletown, and Newburgh has a lot of our attention in Orange County as well. But what I believe the biggest problem is, and it goes back to what Marc is focused on, is the leadership being able to get things done. The biggest problem we have with economic development in Orange County or anywhere is that these people like to, waterboard developers, and they either give up or the project is so beat up at the end, it's not the same. And I've seen.
I know. That just came from your military background.
Sorry. I'm not going to comment on that. But it's effective if you are quick. I know, for instance, if there's a project that wants to come to Middletown, the city of Middletown gets things done. I could say that, and it's very difficult. Look, there's not some type of mystery why certain areas of Orange County are booming. Yes, it's great if you're near a highway. It's great if you're near an airport. But there's literally 5 or 6 communities that I know today. Any company in the room that comes up to me says, I want to move to Orange County. How can I get this done in 6 months? There's a handful that can get that done. So it's really a mental thing, that getting the embracing of the local leaders to get something done. That's our biggest problem across New York State. It's the problem in Erie County. It's a problem in Albany and a Western Tier. So that's the key for the future of the cities. When it comes to fighting crime, we're on it. It's the first time we've changed the culture. The sheriff's department, the DA, the local police departments. We have an agreement with the city of Middletown where they have now men and women on the streets. They're police officers. They don't need the SWAT team. Their SWAT team is being done by the sheriff's department. That allows the mayor to put more officers on the street and fight crime. All these little fiefdoms and things that we have that we're breaking down. I said this last year, if you had government do-over day, now's the time to change and do over these local governments. And you do that with cooperation and willing hearts, because otherwise it's going to continue to decay and you have these problems in the cities. But I see a good future, but we need some cooperation. The problem is election season comes up. So when you have people up for re-election, not me or any of my colleagues up here, it's when the local people are up, that's what we call silly season. And it's hard to get things done because they become political. And that is never a good thing. So at the end of the day, you need cooperation. There's good examples of recreating cities. I'll highlight Middletown, not because they're here, but Toro. I mean, who would ever have thought that Horton Hospital, when they closed up, that building would be reused for something so positive? And that university, Toro College, is marrying with our local Mount St. Mary, which where I went to school, with Orange County Community College, which is ranked one of the top nursing schools in the country. So these are good, positive things. But again, you can't get anywhere without looking. It's a home rule state. Marc knows that worse than anybody. He was a state assemblyman. He knows how it starts from the bottom. And without that local cooperation, it makes our job difficult. We try to move forward and run the ball, but you can only run it so far without that support.
Thanks, Steve. Scott, obviously, look, the casino thing, hopefully there's a check mark, and
What do you think about casino?
we move away from that, and we look at some of the villages throughout the county, and you look at Monticello and you look at Liberty. With or without the casino, they become a detriment to the attraction of people to the county. And is there thought with either revenue that could be provided from the casino or other plans? What else is on the horizon for Sullivan County, assuming that, by the way, the casino is in the hands of a private developer? So what would the county like to see happen?
You know, Sullivan County is so completely different than these three counties. We have always been, I think, considered sort of the ugly stepchild over here. But we're not ugly in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we just have a different personality. Much more rural. Our focuses are on the environment and agriculture. The casino issue just gives us an opportunity to sort of say to the world that we're here, we have a lot of opportunity, you can come here, you now have something to hang your hat on, you have a catalyst and a support system now. I think that now Sullivan County is looking, feeling like we can do anything. You know, when you have something moving into a $1.1 billion destination attraction moving into your community, gives you a confidence that is completely different. We've struggled, you know, like everybody else over the past 6-7 years, but probably just a little bit more. But we did all the things we were supposed to. We did a tremendous amount of cutting. We did a tremendous amount of cutting back on the things that we did, but that only makes the future just a little bit harder. We have to rebuild, and we have to rebuild quickly. All of the positions that we let go that were supportive and ancillary to creating the business community, building the business atmosphere, need to be put back in place and quickly. And we're doing that. We're meeting in small groups and trying to focus on all the different issues that we have to look at, workforce development, tourism, development, and those kinds of things. I think that the market will rise to the level that it needs to over the course of the next 2 years. The villages are very difficult because that's where our population centers are, and there just hasn't been the focus there that, you know, that we would have liked to have had. But it's very difficult attracting people to Sullivan County without that catalyst. So no matter what it is in Sullivan County, I have a great amount of confidence that we're going to do really, really well. We're going to go back to our roots. We are going to be able to welcome people back into the community. We're going to be able to build up all of those natural resources that we do have. We don't have the Hudson River, but we do have the Delaware River, which is an extraordinary asset to us. The western end of our county is a tourism destination like no other. Beautiful, beautiful scenery, welcoming people, great attractions. And they're all just going to keep building and building and building, and we're going to support it in every way we possibly can.
Okay, so let's go to the audience for a little bit here. Let's break this up a bit. And so you heard a little bit about casinos, a little bit about economic development, a little bit about vision for the future. Anyone have a question in those areas?
Well, thanks for coming.
Ross, sure.
Thank you, John. I'm Ross Pepe, President of the Construction Industry Council, Westchester, Hudson Valley. First of all, thank you, John, for putting these together. Need to discuss, and we learn, those of us in the audience, about the needs and what your views are on subjects. You've talked about infrastructure, and I think you all know, certainly have said it, that the infrastructure in this region and this state is in such a deteriorated state that we need something new to happen. And the Hudson Valley region, in our view, is a primary interest area where we think there should be a lot more attention paid by state government as to the funding needs for the infrastructure. We have in front of us today an opportunity that's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take advantage of the bank settlement money, $5.1 billion. They just added another $600 million to it last week, and use that money for the needs of infrastructure statewide, and to make sure that the Hudson Valley region is getting its fair share of that as well, because we have some concerns about Hudson Valley not getting its fair share of the state funding when it becomes available. So I'd like to hear your view on the bank settlement money, how we can make the position known to Governor Cuomo, to the state legislature, that that money should be used as a one-shot, once-in-a-generation time to fund infrastructure needs throughout this region. There's billions of dollars of needs just in this region, never mind statewide. So we need to have a focus on that. And I think you individuals, you as county executives, you're the voice of the people that bring the message to Albany, that get our delegation energized to do the job that we elect them to do as well, cohesively, collaboratively, and cooperatively. and you're the voice that can bring that message there. So I'd like to hear your view on that.
I couldn't agree more. And again, for everyone to understand what that surplus is in Albany, which is always the most frightening thing in the entire world. If you leave a lot of money laying around in Albany and tell people it's surplus, it's like watching vultures come to the table. There's a reality. It's about utilizing dollars that were recovered. By the way, the money it was on the backs of homeowners and investors that were taken advantage of by unscrupulous financial institutions. That's the reality of where that money came from, a settlement in that process. So now let's talk about how those dollars can best be spent to make sure we positively impact our community. In Ulster County, it's about not just, and again, it's across the board, it's not just Ulster County. It's not just about rebuilding our infrastructure, it's making sure those jobs remain local. So there's apprenticeship language we just signed into law in Ulster County because we think it's critically important that we train future workers that are going to be able to make a difference in our community as well. We understand how important it is, but the infrastructure is also more than roads and bridges and making them better. It's things like making sure our school systems are better. That is a critical part of it. So often we see elementary schools closing, we see things shutting down, and everyone kind of chagrins, oh my goodness, there's a reduction in population, things must be different. It also ties into our cities. We had an elementary school that was closing next to Kingston High School. We could have simply let it become a vacant, boarded up building. Pattern did a study on the whole process. They were instrumental in being involved in this. Instead of looking at it the way it's always happened, we stepped in and brought together our community college, and now there's a community college satellite campus within 100 yards of a high school, so that kids that were walking to high school can now walk to college. In our community college is centrally located in a county that's the size of Rhode Island. So the reality was, unless you were able to drive, a middle-class kid that could drive to the community college wasn't available to you. Well now, for a high achiever, you can graduate with a high school diploma and a 2-year college degree. For a mid-level, you can graduate in a situation where you greatly reduce your college costs. And for some kids, it's the difference between whether or not they get higher education or not, whether they're in the system or whether they are benefiting from an education. So there's real opportunity, but we have to think of our infrastructure needs as those kinds of buildings as well as our roads and bridges. But there's no question, we are loud and absolutely screaming with our senators, our assemblymen, and the governor's office, because that money is critically important to infrastructure. And you're right, it truly is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
I would just say, Ross, great question. I think New York was ranked a D- by the National Institute of Engineers and Infrastructure Quality right now, and I don't think it's a surprise to anybody in the room. But what I think this is about, Ross, is speed to market. Absolutely, I think the state should invest, and I think they will invest money, but we need to be able to get stuff done. We need to have projects ready to go. So when the money is released, if it is, we need to be able to show that we have the plans ready for redesigns of bridges. When we can do that in-house. Counties can do that now. We have engineering staff. We have people that we work with on the outside. Roads ready to go. So when that money is released and it's usable, you can jump right to the top of the competition by saying you're good to go, because I think that's what the state's going to ask for. When I had my state of the county last year, the first one, and I first came to the office of county executive, I had 3 phone book-sized books filled with decaying infrastructure that Orange County owned, bridges, roads, facades that were falling into the street. But they are all, like most plans, sitting on shelves. We now have many of these projects under construction or slated to start in the next few months. That's what it's about. So, we haven't talked about economics or budgets. Like, we still have a budget crisis in Orange County, so you're saying, how are you doing all this infrastructure work? Because all this money has been sitting in the pipeline for decades. We have bridges that have been closed for 10 years in Orange County, major bridges that are under construction now. So being able to take the dust off these plans and get things done, and also look at other projects, road projects, bridge projects, sewer plants. Nobody likes to talk about them. They're not sexy, but they're necessary for economics, and water projects. These are things we're working right now. We had two pieces of property that were purchased in the 80s. I think Marc and I were still going to puberty. I brought that up last year. That were earmarked for water projects. One of them is moving forward right now. now. One of the actually engineers in the room is working on them to provide water for one section of Orange County. And another one, I think we're going to be, we're talking about it now. Maybe we'll have something started on that. These are the things that need to happen, because if that money is released, they're not going to sit there and say, get back to us in 5-10 years, we're going to keep this money in the bank account. Because one of my jobs as county executive, I'm chairman of the Orange County Transportation, they manage the TIP, the federal monies that are coming down from the state. And we have a lot of communities that are sitting on money. And what you've seen lately in the news is all these other communities saying, look, if you're not going to move on it, we're going to take the money and reallocate it somewhere else. And that's what they should do, because if money sits in a bank account long enough, like Mike's saying, the state and federal government will look at it and take it and give it to someone else.
Let me, worse than that, and your question, brings up the point. Albany is in the moments of considering whether or not these dollars ought to be a single expense or a reoccurring expense. Now, I'm not sure how it is that the state legislature, and I served there for 6 years. We had no money when I was there, so there was no vulture-like activity in the assembly minority. But nevertheless, we had no cash. In fact, we barely had offices. But that's an entirely different conversation. They're currently considering whether or not to use these dollars for reoccurring expense. That would devastate us, creating deficits in out years that will just absolutely bankrupt the state. Beyond that, the Attorney General announced about a month and a half ago that this first to $5 billion, nearly $6 billion now in recovered fines or revenue is just the beginning. That there are, in fact, others in the pipeline, and the state is going to be achieving and seeing additional recoveries. So to that point, I would offer, really to add to what Steve had just said, Albany often suggests to counties that we can do the things they don't want to do. Like those mandated services they impose on us, those social service, Medicaid, et cetera, all the things they don't want to spend money on, they force us to do. Well, the truth of the matter is, there's one thing that we'd welcome them having us do, because we do it quite well, and that's infrastructure investment. We already not only have the plans in place, we have the planning mechanisms in place. We're ready to go. We're ready to build bridges. County's responsible for most town and village bridges of certain length. We're already prepared. Our transportation investment program has millions of dollars waiting. And the worst thing that could happen is for the state, beyond the state using these dollars as reoccurring, as if they might happen again, would be for Albany to take the $5 billion and funnel it through the DOT. Why? Because they shave about 80% off for their own projects, delaying municipal projects, delaying capital projects. And if you really want to see waste, you should take a look at some of those expenditures. But the truth is, if more of those dollars got to us with the instruction that our job is to repair streets, repair highways, repair bridges, we're ready to go. We do it every day for the state of New York, and we do it for our taxpayers. Dutchess County this year is going to invest about $26 million in local, state, and federal aid for highway repair, bridge repair, and infrastructure enhancements. At the same time, I will tell you that if we're advocating for those dollars, you've got to advocate for a change in New York State's finance law. In order to make water and sewer investments any place in the state, we've got to change the way that we fund it, because right now a very small number of people are expected to shoulder the burden for the expansion in water and sewer. And then we wonder why we don't have water and sewer facilities in and around our city centers. If you want density, you need to have water and sewer. So we're arguing it. We're advocating for it. The State Association of Counties certainly believes that more of it needs to be directed to local infrastructure projects, and we're prepared to go.
So 2 quick points. One, thank you, Marcus. We went almost an hour without the mention of mandates. Thank you. I didn't have to admonish anyone on that, but...
Well, we said casino 97 times. I thought we should say mandate once.
The idea was to just get it out of the way.
Okay. Mandate.
The second thing is, I'll really date myself to say that my master's thesis in 1978 was written on New York City's crumbling infrastructure. And there was in Queens, it was known at that time as the Jamaica Avenue or something. I'm trying to remember the exact road it was. It was known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. There was just full of potholes, and there was no place to go, and there was no money, and New York City couldn't enter the bond market. All right, another question from the... Sure.
Okay, everything sounds pretty rosy, wonderful, etc. But speaking of personal experience, I have several friends that I could name you What about the baby boomer generation? Beacon homes, 500 grand. I know several people who were appraised, and I say that realistically, at undervalued, okay? And from that, I would say I have a maternal grandfather who was with Newburgh Savings Bank for 60 years, counting. I grew up living in that particular building, all right? But appraisals I find very unfair. I find that realtors should not be doing appraisals. It should be an independent party, okay? And also, you know, it's causing, a lot of people are leaving. I have friends that are in danger of losing their homes, for God's sake. Real. That's the unseen, all right?
I'll put a question mark at the end. Okay. No, I appreciate that. If I made it seem as if things are rosy, I can assure you that when we look internally in Dutchess County, we're still struggling to get out of what has been a very difficult economic condition. No question. I mean, my family lived, I hate to say this, pardon me, Sheila, my family lived through the first IBM downsize, my father losing his job at that point in time. He's done remarkably well since. But even today, in Dutchess County, what we experienced was the housing bubble, this extreme high-valued suburban-style development, which obviously put pressure on our real estate market, drove up property values, and then people, by the way, took advantage of a very, let's say, less than fair borrowing structure. So you have people in homes that can't afford to stay, right? No question. And then, of course, the housing values drop. All I can tell you is that we have been witnessing this, particularly in the city of Poughkeepsie. Certainly, the rebirth in the city of Beacon has helped to address that to some degree. But the truth of the matter is we are well below where we started 20 years ago as far as values. At the same time, there's no question that the bar has been reset when it comes to income levels. Dutchess County, and I know all of us were ranked, we were just acknowledged as, I think, the 82nd highest weekly income of any county in America, which is good for the people at the high end of that average, right? But those at the lower end continue to struggle. And when I came into office, we saw this was after about 6 years of the recession, a 60% increase in Medicaid caseload. Why? Because too many people turning to government to assist them when the economy's bad. The only thing I can offer to you is we're doing everything in our power to really improve the brand and enhance the county so that values start coming up, that incomes start coming up, and taxes go down. The 2015 Dutchess County budget provides the largest property tax levy reduction in 14 years. We've recognized that it is too costly to live in the region, and we have to not only cut, keeping costs down, but grow, trying to create economic recovery. And there are far too many who took advantage of folks who just couldn't afford to stay in the homes they were in, and now we see the crisis because of it.
No. Okay, wait, sorry. I do want to give other people a chance. Sorry, in the back?
We may be competing as a region for one of the $500 million awards that Governor Cuomo is proposing for use of the Sullivan money. So we'd be competing against 6 other regions for a $500 million economic revitalization grant. I'm interested in hearing from each of the county executives their ideas for how we would propose to spend that $500 million. We heard from County Executive Molinaro about investing in our cities. If he wants to elaborate on that, we'll be interested in hearing from each of you, because Jonathan and I and others are going to have to be shaping proposals for $500 million to revitalize our region. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. Well, I love the question. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, listen, I think it cuts across a whole host of boundaries, and that's one of the exciting things. It's where the counties can work extremely closely together. The interconnectivity of our infrastructure is critically important.
Okay.
Obviously, it's not about any one particular county in this process, and that's the exciting part of the competition. It allows the entire region to come together. It's also understanding what we do well and how we can foster more of that. In Ulster County, again, agriculture, a $500 million part of our economy, embracing what that is and trying to do it well, that's exciting. But it's not just Ulster County. Clearly also making sure that our cities are stronger when it comes to their infrastructure, water, sewer, and the like, critically important. But also understanding the value of the Hudson River that impacts all of us, and obviously what happens when it comes to Ulster, Orange, and Dutchess. But again, I think that's a critically important process. Understanding infrastructure, understanding those niche parts of our economy that we do extremely well, like precision manufacturing, and again, making sure that tourism never falls far off that map because we draw so many people from the 22 million people that live in the metro New York area.
Okay. Steve or Scott?
I would say, when you talk about this grant process, I think the state's going to be looking for who's going to be able to get things done. You started off earlier, Jonathan, about why was Orange County so successful with the economic development, because that money that's going to seed new companies here isn't sitting in an account and filled with broken dreams and promises. We have companies that are saying they're putting up and they're actually doing what they said they need to do. And I think as a region, if we could provide that and show that, and also I would me being one part of the economic team for Orange County, I would really put a lot of emphasis in getting these sites ready to go. And getting infrastructure ready to go. So we're doing a study on our sewer plant, which is older than me, in Orange County, needs to be upgraded. We're also looking broad across the county for future sewer growth. How are we going to deal with growth in the future? Where's our water sources going to come? So us identifying that right now in-house is only going to make our argument and our application stronger by saying we have all these facts laid out. This is where our track record with economic development, this is where we stand with infrastructure, and this is what we need to move forward.
Scott, anything?
Sullivan County has always sort of been an island behind these three counties, but I see in the future that we are now going to be an extension of those. And the idea that we're all going to be working together to bring all of this community together it makes perfect sense that we would be able to share in this kind of a windfall. Our Route 17 is still languishing in becoming I-86. I think that's a project that is so important for the entire region. There's in travel and infrastructure. Sullivan County has been putting so many of our projects off for so long. To be able to be a part of this kind of development and this kind of a plan would be extraordinary. But I do believe that it's imperative that we work now with the three counties specifically surrounding us, but the entire region.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to return to the sort of like lightning round. I'm going to direct some questions here on certain topics that I think are important to each of the people here. So, Marcus, I'm going to start with you. There is so much of Metro North and that matters between Beacon and Poughkeepsie, yet there have been many stories about the derailments and accidents that have occurred. Have you given any thought about what it is that you want the MTA to do to try to improve the conditions or to look at this?
Well, you've blended a couple issues, and let's first not diminish, obviously, the safety concerns. There's little, as of late, it seems that we've had more and more train-related issues, not just in this region, but really across the country. I would offer to you, having seen the MTA from my role in the state legislature, I can tell you that there is waste and abuse that exists that needs to be confronted. There's just no question. They've got to continue to clamp down on those expenditures so that frees up not only the dollars either to return to taxpayers or to invest in capital. Secondly, the state of New York's got to take transportation issues seriously, and that goes whether it's the total statewide infrastructure needs we just discussed or mass transportation. I would offer to you, as much as I do like Long Island, the fact remains that every capital dollar directed by Albany to rail investment, the majority of it goes to Long Island. It does not come to the Hudson Valley, the Harlem Line, or any of our 4 counties in the MTA region, despite the fact that all of us pay 7 separate taxes to support the MTA. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars going to invest in transportation, and not enough of it goes into the capital investment. So let's just say first and foremost that it is a structural problem that exists both in the MTA and in the state of New York that needs to be confronted. Secondarily, though, Metro North for Dutchess County is one of our best attractions. It truly is. It is among the fastest growing rail lines in the state, which makes it the fastest growing rail line in the country, which makes it the fastest growing rail line in the world. We see off-peak growth considerably. We see increased commuter growth considerably. It is one of the best attractions we have for job creators, private sector investors, and as I've mentioned, young professionals, the millennials. But there really needs to be a serious conversation about the safety concerns, the investment in transit, and the smart use of those dollars. Absent that, we're just going to be throwing away tax dollar after tax dollar, and the state of New York needs to deal with this. I would offer to you that total repeal of the MTA payroll tax is necessary. We have governments, the first time in the history of New York, by the way, where the state legislature imposed a tax on governments, which, by the way, is not a tax that governments pay. It forces its citizens to pay more. So you pay a payroll tax to your employer, you pay a payroll tax to your government, and we pay it to the state of New York and don't get what we deserve in return. I'd suggest the elimination of the mobility tax so that at least we start a little bit more fresh. And then look at the entire taxing structure as it relates to transportation. Because frankly, 7 separate taxes hidden away in your cell phone, your cable bill, your vehicle registration is just unacceptable. So until you get serious conversation at the state level, we're going to continue to spend bad money after bad money. And that really needs to be confronted.
All right, Mike, let me ask you, the superstorms, Sandy, Lee, Irene, probably had, not to say that it didn't affect all 4 counties, but it had an enormous impact on Ulster. Are you satisfied with what we're doing to rethink where, because this is a federal issue, a state issue, where are we going, and should there be more to be done?
Well, I think clearly there's an understanding that the climate is changing. Putting aside all the arguments that happen in that arena, there's a reality. Weather's different, okay? And the idea that you have 100-year storms every 15 minutes seems to be obviously evidence to that. If you've been in my situation where you are standing there watching houses torn from their foundation and people on the roofs with their lives at risk, you understand the devastation that can happen to communities, especially when you have things like hurricanes that can be so brutal. When I flew over New Paltz, it was unrecognizable in the farmlands because it was all underwater. The only thing I saw was a rooftop, and it looked like a sail on a sailboat in the middle of the ocean, except it was an entire community. So there's no question that we have to rethink that, but I also don't want to lose sight of a different conversation that was going on about transit. We're talking about our trains on the other side of the river from here. There's a very serious and incredibly dangerous occurrence going on. Every single day, there are trains going by that could explode and cause absolute tragedy in high-density population areas, as well as environmental tragedy. So the question really is, when we talk about our trains, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that's a big part of it as well. When it comes to discussions about infrastructure, and that's what we were talking about earlier, that's what I think comes into play when we're talking about climate change. Fortifying infrastructure so that it can withstand the kind of damage that comes, because that's what we were seeing. We were seeing roads and bridges that weren't built to handle anything like the damage that was happening to them being overrun. If there's a good news to the DPWs and everyone who's worked in this entire process, you really wouldn't know in Ulster County. All the bridges that were broken are fixed. All the roads that were washed out are rebuilt. Everything has been completely redone from all of those storms in an incredibly short window of time, and that's something that we're very proud of.
Okay. Steve, the County Government Center, it's in the paper every day. You and I have spoken about it. I'll just say it's an odd-looking building. But let's leave that aside for a moment. There are historians that love it. There are businesses in Goshen that are dying over it, saying that the business is being critical. How do you see it being resolved, and where do you think it's going to go?
Steve, you got an issue with the governing center?
Absolutely.
I had no idea.
It's been closed now for over 3.5 years, the County Government Center, and it was designed from an architect named Paul Rudolph. Many of his buildings have been torn down or or changed significantly across the world. So Orange County's had this government center, and it's been closed. It was leaking from the top and it's been leaking from the bottom. It had some issues with all sorts of stuff. So a month before I took office, my opponent for the county exec's race, Roxanne, and I walked into the last meeting of the legislature, and the legislature decided to do this hybrid, this remodel 2/3 of the building, replace 1/3 of the building. That project moved throughout last year, had some stumbling blocks through it, and then by the end of last year, and now coming into this year, we're a few months away, maybe 60 days or less out from starting that project. A architect from New York City wanted to purchase the building. Another company from upstate wanted to buy the building from us and sell it back to us. There has not been significant movement or interest within the legislature enough to make any change in that plan that is now. So where it stands today is this hybrid is going to start. And what does that do for the people that like the building and the people that hate the building? Me, I personally believe it's a model for inefficiency. I'm here to build a building for the government, for the people of Orange County to use. However, that's not the will of the legislature right now. The will is there's some people that want to preserve the building. So 2/3 of that building will be retained, 1/3 will be new. Some of the people that are Rudolph followers say that you take one brick from it, you ruin the building. However, I look at buildings around the country that were torn down, and there's a plaque that says one time in history, this Paul Rudolph building stood here. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the people's building of Orange County. The people elected a county legislature to make the policy. They've made a decision. I'm the executive that's going to move that policy forward. That's it. If you go around a room, if you ask people at this table what they want to have for lunch today, you're going to have different opinions. The bottom is to have a consensus. The county legislature made a consensus on something. They've moved forward on it, and that's where we stand today.
Okay. Scott, let me ask you, Medicaid fraud. I had a conversation recently with a county official in not one of the 4 counties here, in which he explained to me that when he started to examine the residency or where the checks were going, he was shocked to find how many of them were going not just out of the county, but out of the state. And he wanted to foil the state of New York to find out where these checks were going. There's been a lot written about Medicaid issues in Sullivan County. Some may have to do more with the bureaucracy and the leadership, and some may have to do with the issue itself. Any thoughts about, what the county is doing on the issue of Medicaid fraud?
Back when we started in the legislature, when I started in the legislature, that was obviously 3.5 years ago, there was a great concern for the perception that Sullivan County was a welfare community, that you got off the short line bus and you went to Community Lane and you were on the rolls. And that became a focus and an issue for us. So we worked with the commissioner, the then Commissioner of Family Services, and we worked with the DA, and we put together a fraud investigative team, and they have been there trying to root out the fraud, waste, and abuse. It's a really, really difficult process and problem. In order to do that, there is a concern that you are creating obstacles for people who are truly in need, and that is the last thing that we want to do. But we do not want to be known, Sullivan County does not want to be known as the welfare county. So we will continue to do what we need to do to root that out. I think it's an abomination that anybody would use that system to take resources away from the people who truly need it. And unfortunately in Sullivan County, with our poverty levels, with our healthcare statistics, we have people in the community that absolutely need those services, and we want to provide them. But we do not want to provide those dollars to people who are not in need and are abusing the system.
Okay, let me stay with, I'm going to be mindful of the clock. Let me stay with you because I have a different question, different area. You're sitting here with 3 county executives and you're chair of a board of supervisors.
The ones I call the rock stars of local government, yes.
Sullivan County recently formed a new charter revision commission.
Yes.
One of the topics there is potentially the creation of a county executive. Mm-hmm. And not certain how do you feel about it, or what are the goals and objectives of that new Charter Revision Commission?
Somebody could be a rock star. It's a difficult thought process. I've always felt, since I've been there, that Sullivan County was not ready. We did not have the population. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have what you needed to have somebody like that in control. Your county exec is only as good as the person who gets elected to the position. Obviously, I think that these three counties are really lucky that they have what they have. So you have to look at your talent pool. Do we have the people who are qualified and willing to take that on? I think it's probably in our future. I think as with what we see happening in the county, happening in the next couple of years is probably something we do want to consider. Having a county manager and a legislature, again, your county manager serves at the will of the legislature, so they are only as good as the legislature will allow them to be.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, well, maybe. So I find it a difficult question. I see the value in both sides. The form of government. Did we?
No. That's okay. Sorry,
there's value in any form of those governments, but I see probably in the future, in the near future, that's something that we're probably going to spend a lot more time talking about and probably moving to.
Okay. Steve, given you brought it up about being, voted the most popular or the best dad. Super dad. Let's relate that to the attraction of millennials and building families and having kids. Any thoughts about what we're going to do to try to get a greater attraction to the Hudson Valley in that age group? You went to school here, you stayed here, but that's not always the case. There are many people that bemoan both their own children leaving and the fact that we have this incredibly high number of educational institutions in New York where kids come to go to school but leave. Any thoughts on what we could do to try to hold on to them?
I think it's a mix of a couple things. Number one, spending. I don't know about the other three counties because a lot of these guys have been in office longer than me, but last year I cut, with the county legislature, $30 million in spending. I know I could have cut another $30 million. This year, I can tell you right now, I think we have at least $50 million we can cut in spending. So when you talk about what this young lady asked about for housing for people that were older, younger, whatever, anywhere in between, the first thing we have to do in New York State is cut spending, like Mike's saying, cut taxes, so you make it affordable on every level, not just school districts, not just towns, counties, everybody's responsible. So that's one thing. Number two, the late Tom Kerwin, the assemblyman, used to always say, who do you know that says when they're retiring, they're moving to New York? And they're doing that because of the difficult tax structure. And we need to make it attractive for everybody. Not only, I had a bunch of people that retired from Orange County government, many of them are leaving as soon as they get their check, they're moving, they file the papers, because you don't want to spend $1,000 a month on the average for property taxes where you could spend $1,000 or less in many other states around the country. When you talk about the generation, my generation and younger, you have to offer a diverse portfolio of good jobs, not just manufacturing, but you need to have high paying, that's engineering, that's medical, I mentioned earlier. So we are offering those right now in Orange County. Then you have to marry it with what Marc said, housing of all different levels. Not just the McMansions, you need to have the places in between, the small affordable ones, maybe condominiums or other different types of properties. So I think you need to marry a whole bunch of issues together. You need to have the housing close to where they're going to work. I got major expansions and changes going on in my medical facilities in Orange County. I think that is the number one place that I can look to highlight the most, because I have institutions that are educating those men and women there today in Orange County. I have the places where they can work in Orange County. We just need to make sure that they have the housing that's affordable and the tax rates that are that can make them want to stay here after they graduate.
All right, Mike, for you, it may have been glossed over, but let me just make certain the significance is understood. You were selected as one of the 9 leading municipal officials in the United States by Governing Magazine. And yes, I read Governing Magazine religiously. It is quite an honor. My question to you, though, is there were other really cool people that you got to meet in that process, and as a result, was there a program or something that you heard about in another part of the country that you would say, you know what, that's something we should bring back home?
I mean, I think it's important to, first off, being acknowledged like that, it's always very nice, it's very gratifying, but there's a reality. It's not about that. We don't do it for those kind of things. Obviously, we do it to be able to make a difference in our community. The question really is, do we learn things from other people? I sure hope so. I mean, it's why there's organizations. Like, again, I served as the president of the County Executives Association. We work through an organization called the New York State Association of Counties, NYSAC. And again, places like Pattern and a whole host of other people that help us work collaboratively to try to bring results. So absolutely. But I think there has to be an embracing, and that really is when we came into office, I was the first county executive in Ulster County. I always say simultaneously, I'm the best and worst we've ever had. But the reality is, we aggressively embraced innovation and change. And because of that, we've been able to really make significant changes. Ulster County's government is a third smaller than it was when we took office. But that alone isn't enough. More services are available to people in need because we've reinvented things. We merged mental health and public health a long time ago because we understand how important it is to be able to eliminate stigma. So it's about quality of access to care, not just getting less expensive. It's about that throughout the entire organization, making sure that government is reinvented and the money that you save, you also share. We've given over $14 million recently to our towns and our cities to be able to lower their property taxes as well, because I believe lowering property taxes, again, this conversation that somehow we're going to work in the fringes, it's not about the fringes. It's about embracing real, significant reform to lower property taxes to create a climate where businesses will stay, jobs can stay for our young people, and absolutely, we don't have people the second their retirement becomes an option leaving, because we have an extraordinary place to live here. It's amazing. And again, I think that people have a right to be able to stay where they want to stay and not get taxed out of their home and out of their communities.
Okay, and the last question to Marcus. Last year, you actually took $2 million and put it into a program for shared services inside of the county, at issue near and dear to Patton's heart, but to many people, to try to say, are there more creative ways to deliver services? How did it work, and are you pleased, and will you do it again?
Yes, and yes. We are in the third year of our government consolidation and shared services grant program. I want to be clear, though, and I see some of my local officials. Todd Tancredi is here, the supervisor of Poughkeepsie. They don't get much better than Todd when it comes to making projects work. But I will also tell you that we took some of the county's sales tax back and then put it out on the street as part of a grant program. Why? I served 12 years as a village mayor, and I know that going to work at Village Hall every day was a great, wonderful honor. But if everything was okay, I don't know that I wanted to change much of it. So as Steve somewhat joked, a government do-over day, there is no one in this room, I would say there is no one in the state of New York, that if they had it to do all over again would create the government structure as we have today. No question, none. So what we've said to the towns, villages, and cities is, listen, we're going to pressure you because the taxpayer wants less spending, less taxation, less cost, and greater efficiency, and they don't care whose decal is on the side of a truck. So we put $2 million on the street to incentivize shared services. Town of Poughkeepsie's doing snow removal with the Spack and Kill School District. We have 11 separate municipalities now sharing their building, fire, and zoning code enforcement technology. We have the town of Red Hook with the village of Tivoli and the village of Red Hook considering the dissolution and consolidation of their public works. We have the city of Beacon, the town of Fishkill. I know that Bob LaCole is here, along with the village of Fishkill, looking at consolidating police departments. We have the city of Beacon consolidating its firehouses. There is only one way to get government officials to pay attention, and that's to get their attention. Put pressure on them, incentivize it, and ultimately make it happen. Now, we're seeing that happen. I mean, I truly believe that what we are doing is both out of necessity and desire. We have to transform the way government functions to bring a cheaper product to the taxpayer. But let me end by saying the one word that was only mentioned once. We're fooling ourselves if we think that any of us can combat the tax burden in this state unless New York confronts its unwieldy and onerous unfunded mandate structure. You live in a state where Medicaid cost is twice as much as Texas, California, and Florida combined, yet we have half as many consumers of Medicaid. Why? Waste, fraud, and abuse. We live in among the highest per capita taxation in the country. Thank goodness for New Jersey, right? Why? Because the state government structure is so expensive, so unaffordable. And we're fooling ourselves to think that by giving you a $500 tax credit, somehow that's going to produce property tax relief. In Dutchess County, for every dollar that we force Dutchess County taxpayers to pay in property taxes, and I get it, it's not my money, it's the taxpayers' money. You don't give it to us willingly. But for every dollar we have to tax, 70 cents of that goes to pay for Albany spending. Nearly $300 million in mandated cost imposed on county government. Now imagine for a moment if New York State took their 70 cents back. And by the way, let them evaluate the validity, the value of their programs. Don't shift the burden down onto us. We pay for the most progressive state government structure through the most regressive tax, property tax in the country. Let them evaluate the cost, the value of any $1, any one program. And imagine if they took it back. If Dutchess County's tax dollar wasn't a dollar from you, but only 30 cents from you. I mean, imagine that. Last year alone, Dutchess County, we cut some $6 million in county government spending. We provided the largest tax levy decrease in 14 years. Yet, mandated expenditures went up $2 million. If mandated expenditures were flat, we would have given the largest property tax levy reduction in probably about 30 years. Okay? So all we have to, in this state, there are a lot of ways that we can get governments working again. We can wring out efficiencies, and we're doing that. And we're consolidating, we're merging. We have the smallest workforce in 32 years in Dutchess County. But until you get the burden of Albany off of our backs and them focused on the validity, the efficiency, and the effectiveness of their spending, we become the whipping posts for their bad policy.
So to put it in very specific terms, so let's take even the MTA payroll tax, which you were referring to, which you wanted to see done away with altogether. And you're quite right. I think it's actually 9 separate taxes and fees that are buried in all sorts of places. They're in your utility bill. They're everywhere. If the state of New York believes that that is an important program, put it in the state budget, fully fund it, but stop passing it along.
My grandfather, and you've probably all heard this saying, someone in your life has said, my grandfather used to say to me, don't tell me what your priorities are, show me where you spend your money. Right. If Albany's priorities are as they say they are, and I've been there, and by the way, I'll have a very healthy debate about Medicaid services. I think people need assistance, that all the safety net, all of that needs to exist to some degree. But if you care deeply about those programs, pay for them. And it's not a question of which pocket are we taking out of. You cannot expect the small tax base of Sullivan County, the taxpayer in Dutchess County, to shoulder the burden of a progressive government infrastructure as large as New York and expect us to be affordable or effective. That's all.
Okay. Sorry, Mike, I didn't know whether that...
No, you're doing great.
Oh, all right. So let me...
By the way, you called this the lightning round?
Well, we have a definition for that, and that is that I have to get done as close as I can to 9:30.
There's going to be lightning before you start.
All right. So let me just close on this remark.
Parking meters start in 5 minutes.
All right. Several of you mentioned leadership, and it's really been interesting to me that we've been at this kind of forum for almost 7 years, and that the leadership in the county level has completely changed in the entire Hudson Valley. I tease Mike that Mike is the dean of the county executives, and he's now the old guy, as Marcus just said. Community college presidents are changing all throughout the Hudson Valley. You have a brand new one here in Dutchess County. Terrific. You have a new one in Sullivan County. You have a new one all throughout the county. Many of the chamber heads are changing. This is no reflection on the prior person, but there is a whole fresh wave of leadership that's occurring throughout the Hudson Valley, and hopefully that is a wave that we can ride, and it will lead to a better future for all of us. So thank you for coming this morning. Appreciate it.